Well, it is the weekend and it is time to basically go through, do a little cleaning, and answer some viewer questions.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. Same handle for the Instagrams. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Once every 38 years, I am on something called Blue Sky at Sully Baseball. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on YouTube and put stuff in the comments section. And if you are listening to us every day, let us know and use a hashtag Everyday Sully. It helps us get an idea of who's listening to us. We're doing a live stream right now. I see a couple people are already in there. And hey, Jeff Cohen, who's an Everyday Sully, says, I saw you on Blue Sky today. That's right. I did post something on Blue Sky today. I don't really, I'm I'll post a thing every once in a while. I'm certainly not going to be on there all the time scrolling and doing all the other stuff because I got people to talk to and podcasts to record. Um, yeah, this is it. It's interesting. There's not a lot of huge news. We're just seeing that a lot of players are saying, time to sign with somebody. It is going to be mid-February pretty soon. Pitchers and catchers are about to report. And so you're starting to see like, well, I'm Ryan Brazier and I was acquired by the Cubs. Or you saw Ramon Laureano, former Oakland A's center fielder, said, well, I need a job. I'm going to sign with the Baltimore Orioles. And Randall Grichuk says, hey, I need a gig. Diamondbacks, you were a nice place to play. So we'll go there. Jason Hayward signed with the San Diego Padres. By the way, Tommy Pham signed with the Pittsburgh Pirates. That signing for the Pirates. That is they're absolutely no risk signing by the Pirates to put another major leaguer in there. And let me tell you, for those of you who play Immaculate Grid, if assuming Immaculate Grid is still going to be around in 10 years, Tommy Pham is someone to keep in the back of your head when you need someone who had that obscure period of time with a team. Pham came up with the Cardinals. Since 2018, he's played with the Cardinals, the Rays, the Padres, the Reds, the Red Sox, the Mets, the Diamondbacks, the White Sox, the Cardinals, and the Royals. Since COVID, he's played with the Padres, Reds, Red Sox, Mets, Diamondbacks, White Sox, Cardinals, Royals. He played in the 2023 World Series with Arizona, and this will be his fourth team since the 2023 World Series. And you know what? If you get Tommy Pham, you're getting a major leaguer. He may hit you a few home runs, and who knows? You may get a decent part-time player, or you may get nobody. Um, hey, Jet Black Onyx. Am I saying that right? Good morning, sir. Yes, it's good morning here. It's 8:30 in the morning here in California. So what I try to do is there've been a lot of comments and there's been a lot of people posting on some of the episodes I've done recently. And now's the time for a little bit of let's get some cleaning. Let's respond to some of those because pretty soon, as I said, as I adjust my headphones a little bit, pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting and there's going to be actual baseball news to come about. The biggest piece of baseball news that has not happened yet, and Keith Klein, 7168 says, can Bregman just sign in already? Arenado needs to find a home. Yeah, that's the biggest thing floating out there. And since the Pete Alonso signing, uh, that's the next big piece of news to to come off the board. Bregman, look, he could go back to the Houston Astros. That's still on the table. He can go anywhere. Um, but you have, Bregman is still a solid player. I think he's still a good fit with Houston. I'm not 100% sure what Houston's doing. They're trading away. They could potentially lose Tucker and you say Kikuchi and Bregman, but they got back a couple of decent players for Tucker, and the West is incredibly winnable. So I'm starting to think it's an every other year. This might be a Bruce Bochy situation. I digress. But I think that I still think he's going to sign with the Detroit Tigers. I still think that's where he's going to land. I still think the Red Sox are going to trade for Arenado. I think Arenado is gone, and and how anyone in St. Louis still has their job is a mystery to me, because they pushed their chips to the center of the table, traded away a lot of really good players to bring in Paul Goldschmidt and Arenado to bring about a new great era in St. Louis, and now they have to blow the team up. So you're going to give the current GM, the current front office, the car keys to put this team back together. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Boy, apparently Mike Schilt was not the problem in St. Louis, but now they're getting virtually nothing for Goldschmidt. They're probably going to trade Arenado for pennies on the dollar. Um, but yeah, but it's tough to see anything happening with Arenado with Bregman still floating around. If I'm the Red Sox, and I'm not, but if I'm the Red Sox, I would pull the trigger on that move and move Devers over to first. And the Red Sox have a slew of potential superstars coming up through their farm system right now. And securing a couple of points to their infield while they're waiting for these young stars to blossom. And I think it could be a good time for the Red Sox coming up pretty soon. And I can't wait for some of those players to become huge stars and then have them trade them away because they're trying to save some luxury tax money. But Jet Black Onyx says, funny, Alonso signs. Now Bryce Eldridge is going to Giants spring training. Overall, Giants offseason is disappointment as usual. Yeah, this has been, I mean, they made a couple of moves, but they haven't made the big, huge, splashy move. Since the wild card victory over the Mets in 2016 and the disappointing loss to the Cubs, man, Giants were so close to winning that series. If they had won that game where they had the big lead in Game 4 and threw Cueto against the Cubs in Wrigley, with the Cubs starting to be worried about are they going to blow it? I think the Giants would have won that game. I think the Dodgers probably would have beaten the Giants, but who knows? It was an even year, and they were one bullpen piece away from potentially making it a fourth title, I think. But I digress. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Since that moment of winning that the wild card series and losing to the Cubs, the Giants have really been a contender once. With a year they won the 107 games, which is looking more and more like one of the great flukes of all time. They have been the definition of mediocre since the 2016 playoffs, with the exception of that one year. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens this year. I, I I don't know yet. They're a very confusing team. They've made a couple of moves, but not enough to be a gigantic splash. But we'll see. My dad is looking from above down to his beloved Giants and watching the Giants, how they've played since he passed away in 2021. And he's probably thinking, wait a minute, am I in hell? Because that's what the Giants have been doing. They've been putting their fans through this ringer where they're not bad enough that they can just rebuild, like, let's tear it to the ground, but they're not quite good enough to make the playoffs in an extended wild card situation. It's tough. It's tough. By the way, there is one tiny piece of news that happened yesterday before we get back to the viewer questions, and that is we're putting a button on the Ipe Mizuhara story, the one that I was completely wrong about last spring. I was completely wrong. I to review, I thought Shohei Ohtani's interpreter and best buddy was a bit of a Fredo Corleone and ran up big gambling debts. And I thought Shohei covered his buddy and didn't realize, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that. not that I felt Shohei did anything wrong. I thought he was being a buddy to his buddy, and that's what I thought was happening. And I said that because I said the other stories didn't make sense unless Ape Muzahara was some sort of Machiavellian figure behind the scenes. It turns out he was a Machiavellian figure behind the scenes. And excuse me, he's getting 57 months in jail. Now, I don't know about you, but when I heard 57 months in jail, I thought, yeah, you couldn't just send him to 5 years in jail so we don't have to do that division. I remember thinking, okay, 57, that's 4 years and 9 months. Just give him five. Just give him five. But who knows? Maybe Epe bet the under. But that's the end of that story. Obviously, Otani has. I wonder how he's going to do without his best friend there. I think he's going to do okay. He won yet another MVP, put a World Series ring on his finger, and he still has one more thing to prove that he could go back to being a quality pitcher and have a huge World Series, which he didn't have last year. Granted, he was hurt, but that's the two hills he has left to climb. Regain his stance as a solid pitcher in the major leagues and win a World Series where he's putting up big numbers in the World Series. And after that, he could just sort of sit back and say, all right, I'm rehearsing my Hall of Fame speech. And the Epe story is over. And with that, we can put a button on a story where it really talks about how gambling is wrong and has no place to in our world, in our society, to put us in a situation where we're wondering even the validity of what we're seeing on the field, and basically shows that we need to punish those who drag our beloved baseball into the mire of gambling. But first, a word from Prize Picks. The big game is almost here. In fact, it's tomorrow. And there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works: you pick more or less on at least two player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game, wink, wink, where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. I think he'll do that. Pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. And you can check out the promos tab and tally any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Why was I just chuckling there? Um, have you know the great song from the 80s, Take On Me by Aha, where they had the really cool video with a girl going into the comic book and Take On Me, which is about all I can sing without getting us in trouble. The band there they were not American, they were not English speaking. I think they were Dutch. I could be wrong, but I read that they had the lyrics written phonetically because they want to have a hit song in America, and Lord knows they got one. I felt like that reading that ad copy. I felt like I was reading phonetic words for the lyrics of Take On Me. Hey, our good friends over at Locked On A's are here, and they say, nice shirt. That's right. For the Sacramento A's, and good for the San Francisco Chronicle for saying, yeah, that's what we're going to call them. They play in Sacramento. They're the Sacramento A's. They're not just the A's or the Athletics. That is ridiculous. All right, let's get back to some of the viewer questions here. Oh, and I was talking about I had a whole episode where I was uh talking about the Ken Burns special and how we're just about ready for another edition of it. The last one was in 2010. The previous one was in 1994. So we are ripe for an update of the Ken Burns documentary. And I ran through a lot of the stuff that I felt would be good quality topics for the update. Stephen Colatrella says the two big stories have been no real commissioner in baseball for decades. I do think that's a big issue. Obviously, Bud Selig wasn't a real commissioner. And we have Manfred, who is not a commissioner. We did the whole episode on Faye Vincent, who was the closest thing we've had to a real commissioner, certainly in my lifetime. And that is someone who, yes, is hired by the owners and everything, but has kind of the better interests of baseball in mind. No one's minding the store in that capacity right now. Certainly not since the Bud Selig had his little coup. Analytics taking much of the in-game fun out of the game. That's, I mean, I think that's subjective, but I do think that there is to be said about that. I love pitching matchups. That's one of the great things about baseball. Who's playing? The A's are playing the Astros. Well, who's pitching? Who are the starting pitchers? That's who has the edge in that game. Well, if we're doing things like openers or not letting the starting pitcher go past the fifth, then that takes that away from the game. And having the parade of relievers come, yeah, that is less fun. I will say that. It takes why are you even seeing who's starting the game anymore if it's now meaningless? And they're not, by the way, we all know they're pulling the pitchers after 5. It has nothing to do with analytics. Zero. It has nothing to do with, hey, we've crunched the numbers and this is better. Of course not. That's a complete red herring. It's money. Starting pitchers cost more money. So let's create a universe where we don't have to pay starting pitchers a lot of money. That's all it is. It's ridiculous to think, hey, this pitcher can go another inning and a half. This pitcher is the best choice to face these next bunch of batters instead of some gassed reliever. And then you run through all your pitchers in the first, you have you use 5 or 6 starting pitchers in a 9-inning game, then you go into extra innings and you're like, oh man, we've kind of run through all of our good pitchers. Yeah, maybe you could have had someone throw more than 8 pitches. And also, taking stolen bases and more daring parts of it because it's risky. Yeah, it's risky. Risky is fun. I've always wondered about the people who say, well, you don't want to steal a base there because of this risk or that risk. Do these same people watch the Fast and the Furious and say, wait a minute, your hands at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, watch your blind spot? Isn't the risk part of the fun of it? When we all celebrated the life of Ricky Henderson, wasn't the fun of a Ricky Henderson or Kenny Lofton or Vince Coleman or Brett Butler or who are some of the great base stealers? Tim Raines. When you saw someone like that on, Lenny Dykstra, someone who was a big base stealer, was part of the fun of Eric Davis being at first base was, oh, he's gonna go. He's gonna go. I don't know. Um, I, I think that talking about the stats, I do think talking about and I think I mentioned this, the Mike Trout, Miguel Cabrera debate of 2012 would be an interesting moment. That's an interesting milestone in the stats versus non-stat world. Um, uh, let's see. Gavin D. Lelouch. Okay. As a Bull Durham fan, I should have got that. I think Clayton Kershaw deserves to say not only for his dominance, but also his complicated playoff narrative, which would tie nicely into the vindication of 2020 for him. Yeah, Clayton Kershaw in the playoff narrative is also one of the reasons why Dodger fans are still angry about 2017. Because remember, Kershaw dominated the Astros in Game 1, and he came out of the bullpen and was phenomenal in Game 7, and he got rocked in Game 4. Was it Game 4 or 5? His second start. He got rocked, and they were cheating, and they knew what was coming. And it's in the Nuke Lelouch scene when Crash Davis is telling the batters what's coming. Yeah, they can tee off on him. And think about the pitchers who the Astros teed off on: Chris Sale, David Price, CC Sabathia, Clayton Kershaw, all these terrific pitchers that they just teed off on. when they're at home. We found out they're cheating. That was going to be Clayton Kershaw's great moment. That World Series. That was going to be his John Elway. Remember, John Elway kept losing big Super Bowl after big Super Bowl. Two of the biggest butt kickings in the history of the Super Bowl were John Elway losses. And when he finally won the Super Bowl, it erased all of that. And he won the next year as well. That was going to be Clayton Kershaw's moment, his John Elway moment. He didn't get it, and the other team was cheating. That's one of the reasons why. And mind you, that's one of the reasons why I don't let it go. I can't pull a Frozen and let it go. I can't pull a Taylor Swift and shake it off. I'm not even a Dodger fan. And I still think, you know what? That stinks. And Astro fans who say, we got to put it behind us, then quit saying this is the Astros' second World Series title when you're talking about 2022. Can't have it both ways. And by the way, young Wolford had one of the worst takes I've seen in a while. If you want to discredit the 2017 World Series, I don't discredit it in that I acknowledge it exists, but it has a cloud over it, kind of like the 1919 World Series does. Then you must also discredit LA 2020. Incorrect. Playing half a season doesn't count. That's just not how baseball works. That's the bad take of the day. Not going to discredit. That's the World Series they played that year. Okay, there wasn't cheating involved in that. That's a bad take. That's a well, what aboutism, which we quite frankly have a little too much of these days. A lot of people suggested that we talk about that Ken Burns should talk about some of the rule changes. And Mike O'Hare Z90 says he loved the fact that I had the WBC included. You kind of have to. We're starting to see the international expansion in baseball. We're starting to see that they're bringing in someone from players from Cameroon. They're going to try to build a baseball academy in Brazil. You're starting to see more players coming from other parts of the world. You have the WBC, and the fact that the last WBC was actually really compelling has to be a big part of it. But some of the rule changes, like no more pitcher DH. I hate the universal DH. I truly do. I hate the universal DH with every fiber of my being. I loved that one league had the DH and one league didn't. I love that there was a distinct difference between the two leagues. I like the DH. I like pitchers batting. I like pizza. I like sushi. I like Amadeus. And I like there's something about Mary. You can like more than one thing. And it was just, well, the pitchers have this is OPS. That did it, did it, did it, did it, did it, did it. Every time a pitcher got a hit, the place went bananas. And it happened a bunch. And if a pitcher hit a home run, it was people lost their mind. And you had good hitting pitchers, which were fun. I never understand the people trying to delete fun from baseball. It never made sense to me. The universal DH sucks. The only reason I've come to grips with the universal DH is because it was a compromise that helped avoid a work stoppage. And so I reluctantly bite my tongue and go like, all right, fine. And the fact that you could have a pitcher be a decent hitter, or just the unlikelihood of when it happened was a lot of fun. But because it didn't fit into the proper spreadsheet, we're removing fun. Which brings us to what Bobby Espinal says. I don't know if it's enough aspect to put it again, Bergeron, but maybe the Shohei Ohtani rule says it might encourage more two-way players. Yeah, but what's the point of the two-way player, the pitcher hitter, if we have like, well, the ROPA plus is not as good. Removing fun from baseball, I'm not a big fan of. And of course, we have the great example of why we should have the two versions of the league, the pitcher and the hitter version. But no, we can't have that. We just cannot have that. Oh, and I got to correct something too. I had made a mistake. I had said that Jonathan India was still on the Reds, and Terrence Durning pointed out that I he was dealt to KC. Yes, that sometimes happens. I sometimes talk a little too quickly. All right, when we come back, I have a few more to go through, and I'm also going to have some of our comments that are on the that we're doing live. Attending playoff games, they're an unforgettable experience and it brings the fans together. I went to the National League Championship Series at Dodger Stadium this October, and the energy was absolutely palpable. It's great. And how did I get my tickets? I got them through Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. When I use Game Time to buy my NLCS tickets, it made it really easy to get a good deal. And the super deal was impressive, offered the best value for the event. And they have the seat view, so I could see exactly where at Dodger Stadium I was sitting. They had all in pricing, no surprise fees at checkout. It made the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the on time ticket delivery and the lowest price guaranteed gave me peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices. They're guaranteed. It's game time. All right. Dr. Guest Film says, "Hey, Sully, longtime watcher. I was curious if you ever done a follow up to your old Misery Index video. I love an update ahead of the 2025 season. I'm going to do something along those lines where I'm going to, before the season starts, I'm going to take a look at the teams that have the highest suffering index and what those teams did to fix that. And I'm also going to do an update once all the big, pretty much once Bregman signs. I'm going to go back to the episode where I made my free agent predictions, and I'm going to see how accurate I was. I know I was accurate on a few of them, and know I was dead wrong on some others. Let's go to Han J21 says, "Hi, Sully. You have a follower from Scotland. None of my friends at school have even heard of baseball, so you keep me up to date." Well, there you go. I hope you're wearing your kilt while you're watching this. Just remind you that they were not wearing kilts at the time of William Wallace, so that's one of the several historical inaccuracies in Braveheart. Enjoy the haggis and try not to look at train spotting as an instruction of how to live your life. Let's see what else we got. Jet Black Onyx says complete games are gone history. Yeah, I missed that. I miss that. I still I have the horrible point of view of saying you relieve a pitcher when they need relief. If a pitcher is pitching well, you let the pitcher pitch. If the pitcher needs relief, you get you get a new relief pitcher. Um, do you think this is from Peach State Sports? Do you think the Braves deserve the World Series title in 21? Yes, because they won 4 games against the Astros in the World Series. Seems to be pretty good. Do you think it was a fluke because they kept losing to the Phillies in the first round? Um, I they won the World Series. They beat a very good Brewers team. They beat an excellent Dodger team. They beat a very good Astros team. What else do you need to do to win the World Series? You can't retroactively remove a World Series. They were a very good team that put together that became a absolutely blueprint of how you should deal with injuries, which was when they lost their damn outfield, including Ronald Acuna Jr. And they said, well, let's put a major leaguer everywhere. And Rosario, Soler, and Peterson all came up big in the postseason for them. And they won the World Series. They deserve to win the World Series. Ask yourself, did they win 4 games in the World Series? And the answer is yes. Follow-up question: do you think they have a chance after Ronald? Yeah, they have a chance. Of course, they have a chance. They're a good team. I actually like their offseason. I think they're a very good team. I think Philadelphia is a good team. I think New York is a good team, and I think Atlanta is a good team. There are 3 good teams in that division. All of them are probably going to win 90 some odd games, and in the postseason, one of them will get hot. Um, Jet Black Ox says, I think it's screwy that Otani gets a DH when he pitches. Doesn't that seem wrong? You know what doesn't seem wrong? The money that's flowing in from Otani. They will do anything to get that money, and it makes the game more interesting. Is it wrong? I don't like no, it's fun. Um, and Jeff Cohen asks, when you speak of collusion, are there any owners involved in that today? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I've been wrong before. See Epe. I think some owners are just pocketing cash. I don't think it's the same collusion like what happened under Peter Uberoff, who basically, and you go read the great book Lords of the Realm, where basically he instructed owners to not sign players. Even a George Steinbrenner was chomping at the bit to sign Jack Morris or to sign Tim Raines. Imagine signing Tim Raines or Jack Morris in their prime and passing up on it. That's what was happening. I don't think that's what happened now. I think what's happening now is you have some owners who want to push their chips in the center of the team and win, and others who are fine making a nice profit and pocketing the rest. When people say the Dodgers are bad for baseball for putting a great product on the field and saying, well, if no one else is going to sign them, I will. Is that worse than with the Red Sox? Red Sox who you have to pay top dollar for anything there. Money flows in. It is a huge cash cow. They have their own television network. They have the whole region. They sell out the dump. They have fans all over the world. They are one of the wealthiest franchises, just the income that comes in to the Red Sox. And the fact that they traded Mookie Betts in his prime for 7 cents on the dollar because they want to save $4.28 on luxury tax while not lowering the prices. And you'll notice that since that, they've made the playoffs once. And the Mookie Betts trade will go down as the single worst trade of the 21st century. There was no justification of it then. Now it looks even worse. And that's because one of the wealthiest franchises in baseball said, no, we want to save some money. So we're going to purposely sabotage our team to save $9.48. Which is worse for the game? Which is worse for the game? Well, I'll tell you what's not worse for the game. Jeff Cohen writes says, this made me laugh, Jeff. The question is who's pitching. The question is not who's pitching. The question is who's not pitching. Exactly. And how will Epe pay back $15 million? Prize picks. That's how AP will do it. And make sure to use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after AP plays his first $5 lineup. I hope I don't get in trouble for that. I better end this show right away. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now on Instagram. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing my Super Bowl show, and that is I will tie it back to baseball and figure out which fan base needs a Super Bowl win more, because whether or not they can count on their baseball team to make them happy. I'm also going to do a show later this week where I talk about the things that when I hear people say, I automatically zone out and say, you don't know what you're talking about. Just if you bring this up in conversation, you think you're making a good point, I hit mute because I say, someone who doesn't know what they're saying. We're going to go through some of those topics, but follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it right now. And on the Instagrams, I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But leave your messages right here on YouTube, and I get to them. Answering your questions and contemplating whether or not I can tie Epe into one of our sponsors. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.